So we are in the middle of the National Nutrition Week this week, and the theme this year is healthy eating in the workplace. The aim is to encourage employees to make healthier choices and to get employers to think about what options they make available to workers. Well, Lila Bruk is the registered dietitian and nutritionist in Johannesburg. She joins me now. Lila, thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Devin.
All right, so we talk about so many aspects of business and the economy, and we often forget that behind this are people driving a lot of the economy, and they sit in workplaces, they sit at desks, and when you consider that they spend perhaps 8 hours or more at their workplace, what they eat is very significant, isn't it?
Certainly, and I think that employers also need to bear in mind that the cost of, say, obesity and lifestyle diseases like diabetes certainly is a big burden on a company.
Of course, that will affect their bottom line if you look at it. Let's just talk about the worker first. I mean, you get to work and you want to go for the burger and fries and perhaps, even a pie for an indulgence. Whose fault is it? Because very often one would ask, is it sheer laziness? Is it because there are no options available, or do we not know?
I think it's all of the above. I think that certainly there's a need for greater education, and this is where certainly something that workplace wellness programs can have a role. And I think also that obviously the consumers need to understand how the food affects them, what specific role those foods have to play, and specifically from the point of view of how those foods are going to affect their productivity as well. People need to understand that if they do choose those options, they'll probably slump mid-afternoon, they'll probably feel very tired, very lacking in energy, and therefore their productivity will actually be affected.
What are the bad foods that you as a dietitian and nutritionist often see people eat at work? I mean, what's the common ones?
Yeah, I think the main problem is that very often the cheaper options at canteens are usually the unhealthy ones, like the pies you mentioned. Very often they're pasta dishes that are very, very creamy and rich sauces with it. And very often also there's toasted sandwiches, which might not seem too bad, but it's on white bread, which also will cause their blood sugar to rise and fall very quickly. So as a result, what will happen is that their energy levels won't be sustained, their productivity will be affected, and obviously, therefore, they won't be able to work as well as they would have.
It's interesting you mentioned cheap food in the canteen, and I have to bring in this question. Is the affordability of food really affecting what people choose to eat? Because very often you'll get people say that healthy food is actually very expensive.
It doesn't need to be. If you choose seasonal fruits and vegetables, you choose when there's a special on certain cuts of meat that maybe are the healthier ones here and there, it doesn't have to be more expensive. But I think the bigger problem is that people don't know how to prepare those foods. So once again, it comes down to education. So the cheap, quick takeaway convenience foods, those are much more easy and accessible. People know what to do with them. Whereas trying to actually get used to preparing other foods they're not as familiar with is the problem. And in addition to that, specifically from a workplace point of view, people are not necessarily going to go for foods they're unfamiliar with. So very often the foods that they're more familiar with maybe are the ones that are the less healthy options. And sometimes also the canteen meals tend to be maybe the healthier options are actually more expensive. So people don't choose those options because it's cheaper to get the burger and chips than to get the chicken salad, for argument's sake.
I don't know what the law is around this, but let's just talk about the obligations of the employer. Are they compelled by law to actually provide nutritional food to workers? Where does it stand?
Well, there isn't a law, but there should be one. Certainly the issue is that the employers should, to as much as possible, care about and prioritize the employer's health from an employee wellness point of view, and certainly that will result in overall more productive employees. But the problem comes in that a lot of employers aren't necessarily prioritizing or realizing the importance that such changes can make to their company in so many positive ways. Simply absenteeism is a huge problem, and that can be certainly reduced by making better choices, even if we're not talking about obesity or diseases of lifestyle, simply from boosting the immune system and not getting colds and flu. That in itself will help. But many employees, if you look at the statistics, a lot of employees will blame the workplace on the situation. So they'll say, well, there's no healthy options in the vending machines. The canteen doesn't provide healthy options. Their lunch break isn't long enough to go get something else. So there's a bit of both. I think that it needs to come from both employers and the employees, that both sides really do need to take responsibility to improve the overall wellness.
All right, so final question here. I get to work at 8 o'clock. I leave at 5 o'clock. What should I ideally have in that lunchbox of mine?
So you need to have ideally a balance of protein, carbohydrates, fresh fruits and vegetables, and healthy fats. So if you want to do a sandwich, that's fine, or something like a pasta salad, that's fine. But then you still want to make sure that you're having protein to make sure that you balance your blood sugar. If you just have the carbohydrates on their own, it won't be as good in terms of balancing your blood sugar. So say, for example, you have a low GI bread sandwich and you put maybe some chicken on it, or you have a chicken salad and you put a little bit of pasta in it, and then you have some fruits with that. And if you're having a salad, obviously that's getting your vegetables. If you're having a sandwich, put some extra salads of vegetables on that as well, and then preferably a fruit as well.
Right. Remember that. Thanks very much indeed. Lila Bruk from the Ilovo area, I believe, registered dietitian and nutrition. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Okay.